everybody, and welcome to From the Mezzanine. From the Mezzanine is the Broadway podcast for the Broadway fans, where we talk about all things Broadway news, Broadway grosses, and let's be honest, all of the tea and gossip that happens week to week in the Broadway stratosphere. Hello, I am your host, Lindsay Stone, and welcome to the second anniversary of From the Mezzanine, everybody. I started this podcast 2 years ago this week, and here we are. Let's talk about what has changed in the span of those 2 years. First of all, I think the biggest thing, of course, is moving to New York, which has just completely changed the trajectory of this podcast. And it's really just, I knew that this would happen. Well, I didn't, but I'm very glad that it did. And I had hopes of once I moved here, all of my content would be better, the podcast would improve, the opportunities would surely open up. That's really what has happened over the course of this past year. And whenever I started this podcast, it really only was an outlet. Like, I just needed to talk into the ether, just shout my Broadway opinions to somebody who cared. And now I have all of you who care. And that warms my heart and makes me so proud in so many ways. And the community that we have built on From the Mezzanine and all of my Broadway besties, it's literally a dream come true. And the fact that it's only 2 years in is crazy. But at the same time, 2 years does feel like a long time. And it is a long time to have put out a podcast every single week. I've never missed a week, which is my biggest flex. I'm so incredibly proud of that because I put this podcast first. And I think once I stop doing that, or maybe this is just like my perfectionist brain, I feel like the second I stop doing that, like, it'll lose its steam. And that's not what I want to happen. And so for the past 2 years, I have put out a podcast every single week, i.e. why this episode is episode 104, because we have been doing this for exactly 2 years. Episode 104. I have done this 104 times. That is crazy, right? It's just crazy. And then I've done how many interviews now? 4? So it's just like, it feels wild. And this year I went to the Tony Awards. And if I hadn't have, like, whenever I think it was when I was headed back from the Tony Awards, I was just saying, I'm so happy I started this podcast. I'm so happy I started this podcast. And that's how I felt the entire time. And things have changed. The podcast format has changed a little bit. And I mean, we've got interviews now every so often. But at the end of the day, this is where you get your Broadway news. This is where you talk with me, your Broadway bestie, about what we are loving, what we are hating, what is going on, what is the tea, what is the gossip, what is, like, just everything, right? And that is what is so fun about this podcast, because yes, what I set out for 2 years ago, I am still getting my outlet. I am talking to all of you guys, and I found a community of people who share my opinions or don't share my opinions. But at the end of the day, we all just want to chat about Broadway. And that is my favorite thing on planet Earth. Literally my favorite thing. I could talk about it all day when I'm at work, because I don't know if a lot of you guys know this, but this is certainly not my full-time job. I have a full-time job. I do marketing for a firm here in New York, and that is my full-time job. I go into the office from at least 9 to 6 every single day, and I'm still not putting Do Not Disturb on. 2 years in, and I don't know if y'all heard that ding, but I'm still not perfect. I still do not put Do Not Disturb on. Anyways, I go into the office at least 40 hours a week. So I am a hardworking girl, but I'm out here doing the most for you guys. And if I didn't have this podcast, I don't know where I would be. I would probably still be in Texas. I just don't see myself being happy without this podcast. So do not fear, my Broadway besties. Do not fear, my listeners. Like, I'm here for the long haul. I always think about the future. I'm like, could I still be doing this in 10 years? Will I still be doing the podcast every single week? And the fact that I can still work like my job and like effectively and maintain like my online presence with the podcast and like have this hobby. This is such a fun hobby. And I feel like, anyways, to finish that thought, I do see myself still doing this in 10 years. Certainly, like, I've been a fangirl my entire life. I have been this girl that y'all are seeing, and that's never changed. And so I feel like in 10 years, I'll still be out here talking to you guys and like loving what I'm doing. And everybody has their hobbies, right? This is my hobby. And as a marketer, they always say, you know, you turn your fun things into a business. And that is what I have done with this. And I will say, like, through the trajectory of this podcast, there were times when it felt more like a job than fun, because I had to devote a lot of time to certain things, or it just was really, really demanding. And I put a lot of pressure on myself, more so in the earlier days. But now it is so fun, and it is such a hobby. And I was worried about it when I started. And maybe that was just because I was getting my footing with everything and getting, you know, settled. Like I would have to say no to hanging out with friends sometimes because I was like, I've got to do the podcast and I've got to prioritize this. But at the same time, I was like, I'm so excited to prioritize this. And I'm so motivated to make this into the vision that I have for my platform. And I've done that now. And that feels so amazing. And like this past month, with all of the opportunities that have come across my desk, the work that I put in is paying off tenfold. And I couldn't be more happy. And I am having so much fun, more fun right now than I've probably ever had with a podcast and with my social channels, because it's all kind of like one big thing now. Like if you have a podcast, you have to have the social media presence. And I feel like it's all just, I don't know. It's really interesting. Like the podcast is the main priority week to week, but then you also have to be focused on social media and posting and creating a community there. And through all of that, it's like a circle of life, basically, of like success. And I just feel like I've found what I was looking for, which just feels incredible. And anyways, I'm overjoyed, and the accomplishments that I have had in these 2 years are so much bigger than I would have ever thought. I would have never thought I would have gotten to go to the Tony Awards. Never in a million years. And now that that has happened, I'm just like, what does the future hold? And I'm so incredibly excited for it. And so, yes, we're celebrating 2 years, but it is only going to get better and more fun. And I just could not be more appreciative of all of you listeners and those who are watching on YouTube and those who follow me on social media, on TikTok and Instagram. I wouldn't trade you for the world, and I appreciate you so much. And I hope that you feel my appreciation coming through your headphones right now, because I am so grateful to my listeners. And I hope that you feel that. I bring y'all along through everything that I go through every up and down, through all of the really exciting opportunities that I've had. And I will certainly continue to do that. And I just thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be celebrating 2 years with From the Mezzanine. And I love this. I love my little podcast. I just do. I love every aspect of it. And like I said, whenever I was leaving the Tonys, I was like, if I could go back to 2 years ago, I would just say, keep going. You have no clue what this is going to turn into. And thank you so much for actually starting this, because it was scary to start it at the beginning, because I was in the professional space and a lot of people didn't know, I guess, that I cared so much about Broadway. Ever since like I left high school, I wasn't really in the theater scene after that. And that was fine. I found amazing friends and I found, new things that I loved. But I always loved Broadway, but while I was in college, it definitely like took a back seat, which was totally fine. I didn't like miss it or anything. It just wasn't the most important thing to me. But I was also in like theater classes and stuff in college, but it just wasn't a part of my culture at that time. And so then whenever I graduated college, I got into the professional sphere and I found something was missing. And I was like, this part of me that I've let take a back seat, which was totally good, I need it back again. And I need it back in some way, because just being in like professional workplaces can be like somewhat monotonous. And I loved my job and yada, yada. But it was like, I need my creative outlet. And so that's when I kind of like reintroduced and like refell into my love for like Broadway and theater and everything. And I feel very young to be doing all of this, because I feel like some of my peers, they're older than me, and I'm surrounded by a lot of journalists at these events that I go to. And I feel like I'm definitely like the Gen Zer, like centralized focus on like certain musicals. Like, y'all know I love The Last 5 Years, Wicked. Like, I feel a little, I don't want to say like I keep up just with the trendy musicals, but I definitely love the trends and the trendy musicals. But I also have some deep cuts too. However, I just feel like there's a sector of Broadway where it's like, if you don't know everything, then you shouldn't be here, right? And I feel like in those early days, that could have really pushed me away from pursuing the podcast, because there was so much to learn. And when you speak on, say, actors, like even like an example being like Audra McDonald recently with her coming into Gypsy, I was like, why are we like so excited about this? Like, I've never really been exposed that much to Audra McDonald. And like certain people would be like, what? You should not have a podcast if you don't know everything about Audra McDonald, because she is a queen and yada yada. But then I took a moment, I researched and I listened to her stuff, and then I researched Gypsy, and I listened to Bernadette and Patti LuPone and everybody's renditions of Gypsy. And then I was like, okay, finally I get it. But we cannot, I feel like the Broadway culture and theater fans can be a little toxic at times, because they sometimes feel like you should know everything, especially when you're on social media as much as I am. People are critical of what you post and of your platform. And I'm here to say, you can love what you love. You do not have to know everything there is to know about Broadway to be a fan of it and to put yourself out there. As long as you have a passion, then you should be in this sphere, and you are accepted and you are appreciated as a theater fan. And I feel like at some times nobody said that to me, but I kept going and I said, who cares if you think that I'm naive? It's fine. There's so much out here to know, and we're just out here learning. And so I just want to put that little tidbit out there. If you're fearful of like what people will say, because maybe they didn't know that you were into Broadway like you are, or if you're fearful of, well, I don't know everything that there is to know, just don't worry about it. Like, there is a sector for you. There is a place for you. And that's what I tell other creators who ask me, like, I want to be like, do what you do. Like, you have my dream job, da, da, da. I'm like, go out there and do it. There's literally space for all of us. And sometimes I need to tell myself that too, right? Because it's hard to see other people doing things that you wish that you were at that point to do. But there is space for me to do what they are doing too in the theater sphere. There really is. Like, I only started, as y'all know, pursuing like press events and things really seriously a few months ago. And I was at the Tony Awards 2 weeks ago. So there is space for all of us, plenty of space. Like, there's a chair for you if you're interested in doing this. I think that you should. I know that I've inspired some people to start their own Broadway podcasts and things like that. And I've looked at what my listeners also listen to, because I can see that in the analytics. And y'all are listening to other things too. Y'all are following other theater influencers online. And it's not just me. You know, y'all have your favorites. I hope I'm your favorite, literally. But as long as I'm your top favorite, you can follow other people. No, I'm kidding. But what I'm trying to say is, like, no one theater fan is following one influencer. No one theater fan is listening to just one, Broadway YouTube video. So there is space for all of us here. And I wish somebody would have told me that whenever I was starting. They didn't have to, because dang it, I kept going, and here I am now, thank God, 2 years later. But yeah, I didn't plan on having this big spiel today, but I'm glad that I did. And thank you guys for, supporting me for 2 years now. If you want to support From the Mezzanine in a bigger way, you can do that by joining the Patreon channel and becoming a Broadway bestie. I just posted 2 Broadway vlogs this past week. One was whenever we went and saw The Outsiders, Ben Platt in concert. and Hell's Kitchen. And then I also posted a behind the scenes in the media room of the Tony Awards. We filmed our reactions to watching like the monitors and all of the winners. And so you can see our live reactions to finding out, Shayna Top won Best Book. You can see Sarah Paulson's live reaction to finding out The Outsiders won Best Musical, which was really fun. And yeah, that was a fun behind the scenes vlog taking y'all with me to the Tony Awards. So that is over on the Patreon. And I'm going to be introducing a new segment on the Patreon called Lindsay's Story Time, or FTM Storytime, IDK. But it is going to be kind of like what we did earlier. Like, I'm going to be doing story times about things that y'all have no clue have either happened in the background of From the Mezzanine. I really kind of tell my secrets on the Patreon, and I love that because it is a trusted, safe space, and they get the unfiltered things that happen and they appreciate it. Anyways, but yeah, we're going to introduce From the Mezzanine story times over there. So I don't even want to put a number on it because it's kind of sporadic, but you can count on at least 5 videos a month. It's usually more. This month, it might be like 7 extra videos. And then we also do the Meet Me at the Stage Door, which is the after show chat of From the Mezzanine, where I tell you guys who my Broadway boyfriends are, what my song of the week is. We get into the nitty gritty and probably the more specific and sometimes more negative things about the shows that I've seen that week, and any crazy Broadway tea that might not want to live in perpetuity on the podcast. So go and become a Broadway bestie. It's $5.99 a month. I will send you a postcard when you join. And I'm trying to think of the other perks. I've been sharing messages, DMing with a lot of the Broadway besties on the Patreon chat. They ask me questions and we chat over there. They get exclusive access. They know who's coming on the podcast early and they're able to submit questions for the podcast, for the interview. Like for Dan Barry, they were asking all of their questions for Dan. And as y'all listened at the end of that interview, I asked him the questions that the Broadway besties over at the Patreon submitted. So yeah, there's a ton of perks over there on the Patreon. Please go and join if you are interested. It truly means the world, and we just have such a fun community over there. Well, guys, I know it's absolutely to nobody's surprise, but I saw The Outsiders this week, and this was such a surprise. Shout out to my Broadway bestie who offered me these tickets. That was so kind, and I appreciate you so much. And the seats were in the 3rd row, perfectly center, which I've never ever experienced. I have only ever rushed this show. So I've been in the box, I've been in standing room, and I've been behind the tire. FYI, for my girlies out there, do not sit behind the tire of The Outsiders. It is so blocked. I wouldn't even buy that ticket ever again. Even if it was the only rush ticket that was available, I will not buy that because you miss everything that happens over at the car scene. Like when they sing Throwing in the Towel, you cannot see any of it. So don't mess with it. In my opinion. All right. But you are close. But no, I will never sit behind the tire again. Anyways, I was center, and the rumble has a full new effect when you're watching it dead center. It was crazy. It was so beautiful. I will say, I don't want to harp on this too much because this was my 5th time seeing it, and I will be seeing it for a 6th time this week because my sister is visiting. However, I will say I saw Victor as the understudy for Brent Comer, and Victor did very well. Brent is irreplaceable. He has a sparkle that is so irreplaceable. He literally is Daryl so deeply, but Victor was a great understudy, and I appreciated his performance. And I brought 2 girlies who had never seen The Outsiders before to it, and they were like, Lindsay, we've heard you talk about this for forever. We get the hype after we saw it. I was so happy. I was like, yay, I'm so glad that you'll finally get it. But also anybody would get it. Anybody and their mom would enjoy this show for real. And their dad and their cousin and their best friend and their boyfriend. Everybody would love this show. But what was I saying? Oh, about Victor. My friend had no clue that Victor was the understudy, and all of his songs and his performance as a whole was her favorite part of the show. So congratulations, Victor. That's awesome. And good job. Good work. You did great. Anyways, yeah, saw The Outsiders for a 5th time, soon to be a 6th, which I'm very excited to take my sister to see it. However, oh my God, I am dreading that rush line. I'm dreading it. All right, let's get in. Is there anything else I need to recap? I don't think so. Let's get into our Broadway grosses of the week. I'm so excited because this is the week ending on June 23rd. So we are going to see if these Tony wins changed anything. And I have not looked. So I've not seen if The Outsiders getting Best Musical has increased their placement on the top 10 list. So let's get into it. Number 1 is dun, 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 The Lion King. All right, nobody's surprised. Wicked is 2. Merrily is 3. Hamilton is 4. Cabaret is 5. Okay, wow. Hell's Kitchen is 6. This is surprising to me. An Enemy of the People is 7, which makes sense because this was their closing week. The Wiz is 8. Aladdin is 9. MJ is 10. Harry Potter is 11. Gatsby is 12. Outsiders is 13. So Outsiders placement has not changed. And I guess that's not incredibly surprising considering the fact that they've already been at over capacity for weeks now. They are at 102%. So really what could change but the price of their ticket, and their tickets are already so expensive. So I guess that's not surprising, but I am surprised. I am surprised that it's not higher. Like, all of these shows are neck and neck, though, I will say. Like, once you get to, like, 10, well, no, once you get to, like, 9 through 13 are all within $50,000 of each other. So, not a big difference. So, The Outsiders could very well be at 10, and I hope that they do get to 10 eventually. But it's kind of crazy that Gatsby and The Wiz are still doing so well. I guess the Tony wins didn't make much of a difference. Hell's Kitchen is doing the same as it has been. It's doing amazing. Okay, I'm so curious. Okay, Hell's Kitchen, they're in a theater of 11,000. Okay, for their week's capacity, they had 11,000 people in their seats. The Outsiders had 8,000. Okay, so the reason that there is such a distance between Hell's Kitchen and The Outsiders is because the Outsiders are in quite a smaller theater. The Outsiders should move to a bigger theater. I don't want them to. I like a small theater, obviously. The seats are better. The standing room in The Outsiders is really, really good because it is a small theater, but The Outsiders could easily move to a bigger theater and do a lot better. Jacob's Theater is not small. I guess it's probably kind of average, right? If they're getting 8,000 people in their seats for an entire week, that's pretty average. But I am sad that they're not higher, but they're doing as well as they can without making their ticket price insane, right? Which it already is pretty insane. Their top ticket was $328 last week, but their average ticket price was $156. I love them for still doing Rush. If they did not do Rush, I would be so sad because then I just wouldn't see it. That is why I have not seen Moulin Rouge since I've moved here in all of the 1 year. Oh, by the way, it is the 2nd anniversary of From the Mezzanine, but it is also the anniversary of my 1 year living in New York this week because I started the podcast on July 4th and I moved to New York on July 4th. So July 4th is just like a very big day in my life, which is like so crazy that these two humongous things happened on the exact same day. Anyways, what's going to happen this July 4th? I wonder. Let's manifest. On July 4th, I would like to get an email from Jeremy Jordan's PR team to interview him. Or Aaron Tveit. That I'm manifesting. I'm manifesting it. That's what I want to happen this July 4th. But who knows? I don't have anything planned, obviously, like July 4th fun. But it was kind of bold of me to release the first episode of the podcast on July 4th. You know, like, everybody's kind of busy. Why did I do that? I don't know. I think I just was super excited and I was like, just get it out. And I wanted it to go out on a Tuesday because obviously we release the episodes on Tuesdays. And I guess it was ready on July 4th, which is just so random. But so y'all know a little background. Once it's like holiday time, like in December, typically like podcast views and like listens and everything like dip so much because everybody's so wrapped up in like holiday fun. And so like releasing the first episode on a holiday was kind of silly of me. Anyways, but I didn't know. I didn't know those things then. And now I know. Anyways, okay. Honestly, Broadway grosses were completely unexciting this week. Like no change. Nothing. Like Cabaret is still doing just as well as they always have been. They're in a, like the August Wilson Theater has about the same amount of seats as the Jacobs. So the fact that they are grossing $500,000 more than the Outsiders is crazy. And that is because their top ticket is $599. Okay, folks, let's get on into our Broadway news of the week. There's so much to talk about. But let's kick it off with some tea. So as many of you may have seen, there is a new show coming to Broadway. It is already tried out over on the West End, and now it is headed to Broadway. There's a lot of hype for it, called Tammy Faye, the musical. It did pretty well over at the West End. I was so pumped for this show because Andrew Rannels was announced to be at the helm of it. Well, the Tonys came around, and on the carpet, one of the journalists asked Andrew Rannels, I assume, how's rehearsals going for Tammy Faye? Or they asked him a question about Tammy Faye the musical. And Andrew Rannels said, actually, and I'm just paraphrasing here, I am not in that production anymore. Yeah, I'm really, really sad. I love that musical, but we were not able to work out the terms of the contract in a way that made everybody happy. And so I unfortunately am not going to be in the musical anymore. And then he went on to say, and he of course had like such a great, he approached it really well. And while it sounds shady coming from me, the way he said it, it really wasn't that shady, but there obviously is some tea and shade here, right? He went on to say, yeah, I guess that's why you don't make an announcement of an actor before the contracts are finalized. I'm no professional. You can tell I've watched this video a lot, right? I'm no professional, but that seemed a little bit odd to me. So then we were all like, whoa, he just said on a red carpet that he is not going to be in this show anymore, that it was announced he would be in. They have been selling tickets. It is going to be at the newly renovated Palace Theater, which is a huge theater, by the way. At the helm of it is this woman who has never been on Broadway before. Elton John wrote the lyrics, so they have that going for them. But Andrew Rannels was a very big part of this puzzle that would bring people in, sell tickets, and things of that nature. So the fact that Andrew Rannels is not in it anymore kind of is, it's definitely a shock. I'm glad that I did not already buy my tickets because I certainly would have bought my tickets to go and see him. Let me tell you what Tammy Faye is about, and then we'll get to the news part of this. So, synopsis of the show, quote, it is based on the life of American evangelist Tammy Faye Messner. Tammy Faye tells the story of Messner's rise to national recognition atop a Christian television empire. She and her then husband and fellow televangelist Jim Bakker founded the PTL Club, Praise the Lord Club, in 1974, a platform they used to preach to millions. Messner, who died in 2007, was noted for her compassion for the LGBTQIA+ community during the AIDS epidemic, despite conflict between the community and the church, quote. So it's kind of, okay, from what I can gather online, there's a wonderful video on YouTube of them singing a song, something to the effect of like, the Lord is in all of us. And it's very satirical, definitely an innuendo. And Andrew Rannels is in that video singing it. And it was very, very Book of Mormon coded, like very irreverent and inappropriate and naive, right? Very, very, very Book of Mormon coded. It's giving Elder Price, Elder Cunningham. And obviously, we all want to see Andrew Rannels portray a role like that again because he is just gold at it and we're so familiar with it. And everything Andrew Rannels does is so hilarious. And his voice is one of the greatest voices on Broadway, period, point blank. Well, now we got word that since Andrew Rannels made that declaration at the Tony Awards carpet that he is not going to be in it, it left everybody asking who then will replace Andrew Rannels. Well, this week, we found out that Christian Borle has stepped into the role. There's so much drama here, and I just love it. Like, I'm living for it. It's very interesting because what Andrew Rannels was kind of like alluding to was the fact that they couldn't afford him. He was possibly, I'm assuming here, this is my opinion, maybe he was asking what was over their budget and he wasn't willing to go down to what they were willing to pay for him. And so he stepped away from the role, which obviously, I don't know. I think it's like musical suicide to announce this and then take it back and then like replace Andrew Rannels with Christian Borle. I know Christian Borle has a ton of fans. I cannot say that I am one of them, which I feel like is going to surprise a lot of my listeners. And he is super duper popular and I understand that. But I really am not a fan of Christian Borle. I don't like him or dislike him. The only show that I have seen him in with like my own eyes, I've watched, Legally Blonde. like the YouTube videos, but I only saw him in Some Like It Hot, and his performance did not affect me in any way. And after watching that YouTube video I was talking about earlier, I really can't see how Christian Borle is going to fill Andrew Rannels' shoes. I don't know how anybody could fill Andrew Rannels' shoes. I am an Andrew Rannels stan till the day I die, as you all very well know. So anyways, I guess I don't have any skin in the game with this show anymore. We reported on it months ago because I was so excited about it. I have watched documentaries about Tammy Faye. I have watched the movie that came out. She's really been in pop culture a lot over the past 3 years or so. And her story is really, really interesting. It's very dramatic. It's funny. And it's really extreme, right? And so I can see how it would be an interesting musical, but without, I hate to say this, because it shouldn't be who's in the cast who gets you in the door or not, right? But a lot of my excitement for this show was really in the fact that Andrew Rannels was going to be in it. And now that he is not, I'm just not running to see it, and I'm not incredibly excited. However, I know a lot of people are probably stoked that Christian Borle is in the role. What I was kind of leading to earlier, though, was the fact that, Andrew Rannels' price tag might have been too high, but it appears that Christian Borle probably has a lower price tag, which I don't know if people would have expected, because I feel like they're kind of equally popular, perhaps? I don't know. Y'all let me know. Do you think that Andrew Rannels is way more popular than Christian Borle? I don't know, because I'm clearly on the Andrew Rannels train. And Andrew Rannels, the way that he said it, he really, I could tell, I love him. He's amazing. But he wasn't meaning to be mean or dig or throw shade at Tammy Faye the musical. It sounded like he still really loves the production. It just kind of was a business transaction, right? And things didn't work out. So we're not picking sides out here, but let's be honest, we kind of are. Anyways, I feel like that was a lovely little piece of Broadway drama that we got this week. That was kind of surprising. And whenever I saw that they recast Christian, I was like, this takes away my excitement. I just don't really care anymore about this show, even though I like the story of Tammy Faye. It's an intriguing story. Now I don't have any skin in the game. So anyways, we'll see. We'll catch up later. So that show is scheduled for its opening night on November 14th. So we've got some time. Obviously not a lot of shows open in the summer, or none of them do. But we'll see if maybe they can drum up more excitement. I think that they need to, because the Palace Theater is huge. It is a very big theater. I want to say it's the fourth largest Broadway theater. And the fact that their lead lady is not anybody who has been on Broadway before. And this story, I don't know if it's Broadway. I don't know if it's going to bring in people. I do not think that it's going to bring in tourists. I really do not. Just because it's not a super recognizable name. All of this went down, I think it says the 70s. And so a lot of the international tourists who come to New York, I don't think that they will recognize who Tammy Faye is. So it doesn't have that international appeal for the tourists. And I really don't see this doing that well. Just because it's in a huge theater. I feel like it should be in a smaller theater. I think the only thing that they have working for them, and what is working the best for them, is the fact that Elton John is at the helm of it and he wrote the lyrics. And so for that reason, I think he will get butts and seats. But other than that little element, I don't know if I see a success story here for Tammy Faye the musical. I hate to say that right before it's even started, but go watch this YouTube video. I'll put it in the show notes below, because this made me want to go and see it, but I just can't see Christian Borle replacing Andrew Rannels. Okay, with that kind of sour note to Tammy Faye, let's get into another sad news story that we got this week, and that the Who's Tommy is closing on Broadway. This is a little bit of a surprise to me. Let's see where they fell in the Broadway grosses, because I was under the impression that it was doing kind of well. Yeah, it's really kind of not, I guess. It was doing pretty well whenever it opened, and now I guess a lot of the people who were excited for it have already passed through, because this past week it had 78% capacity. It's not doing desperately bad, but I think that they needed a Tony win in order to keep going. And we all kind of were thinking that Heart of Rock and Roll and the Who's Tommy would close ASAP. We knew Heart of Rock and Roll would likely close, and they have already closed. They announced they're closing, I think, like 5 days before they actually closed. It was a quick turnaround. Let's see how they fell in there. Yeah. In the Broadway grosses this past week, they had a 67% capacity. And I think this was their closing week. And the week before, they had a 51% capacity. That's just not maintainable on Broadway. You can't pay your actors when you're not even or barely filling the house 50%. That's really bad. Now that I'm looking at capacities, I just want to mention Chicago had a 63% capacity last week. People say it's never going to close, but I'm like, why? You know? Apparently the people who own the theater, allegedly, like they're never going to close it. Like they love this show. Their heart is with this show. They want to keep it on. It is the longest running musical right now on Broadway. So I guess, you know, they've recouped decades ago so they can stay on Broadway. But I'm kind of like, it feels like it's run its course. Anyways, yeah, so the Who's Tommy, to bring it back, is playing their final performance July 21st. So if you want to see the show, you've got a hot minute to get in there and see it. The show opened up back on March 28th, so they didn't really have a stellar run. By the time that this show closes, they will have played 132 performances. It's not great. They're definitely not going to recoup, I believe. Knock on wood. I hope that they do, but I don't see that for them. I want to read the synopsis of this show because I have heard like a different narrative for it from so many people, and it sounds so crazy. Like it just doesn't make sense factually. I know. Let's just read it. So this is from Playbill. It says, quote, based on The Who's 1969 rock opera, Tommy, the musical follows the young Tommy Walker. After witnessing his father shoot his rival, Tommy is emotionally lost and spends his time staring endlessly into the mirror. Then an innate knack for pinball catapults him into celebrity status. Quote, yeah, this is not getting me in there. Like I loved every Tony performance. I really did. Cabaret was really weird to me, really bizarre. I want to see it if I win the lottery, but otherwise I'm really okay. It's like a little too freaky deaky for me. But other than that, The Who's Tommy had me like giggling. I just thought it was so bizarre. So bizarre. I don't know. I just can't get behind it. I think it's just not my style of show at all. This is actually a revival. It played, I want to say in the 90s, it came to Broadway. And I remember because Norm Lewis, whenever we were at the Cheetah Rivera Awards, he said he was in it. And I had no clue. I actually didn't even know that it was a revival. I knew that it had played at the Kennedy Center with Casey Cott, but I had no clue that it had been on Broadway before. And back whenever it first ran on Broadway, it was super successful. It played for 2 years. So this is pretty much a letdown in the fact that it didn't last, I mean, even a full Broadway season, you know? So it's unfortunate, and I feel for the cast and crew. I don't think that it's a bad show. I really don't. I feel like they've done like relatively well. And I do feel like they could stay on Broadway a little bit longer. I do feel like it is just a subject of its circumstance. Like I feel like 70% capacity. They're like, okay, you've run your course. Like, let's get something else in the theater. It's probably like the owners of the Nederlander Theater ready to find something to replace it and bring in more money and more box office sales. I feel like that's what's happening here because 70% I do think is maintainable, especially since they had more success whenever they opened. But yeah, I feel like they're just like, okay, you didn't win the Tonys. Everybody who's seen it has seen it. And let's just move on and bring something else. So anyways, if you are wanting to see this show, catch it on the road. It is kicking off its tour in Rhode Island, and it is going to be starting fall of 2025. So that's in a long time. That's in over a year. Will it really be going on tour? I don't know. Probably. And I think maybe it would do okay on tour because The Who's Tommy, you know? So people are going to be excited about that. I don't know a single song. I do not even know the song Pinball Wizard. So this show is just so entirely not my type. But I'm sad for the cast and crew. And if you want to catch it, hopefully you can catch it on tour. Moving on to our next news story of the week, y'all. We finally got word that Boop is headed to Broadway. So this is a show that started really like being really popular, and everybody was talking about it coming to Broadway whenever it had its off-Broadway tryout over in Chicago. I think a lot of people liked it. And I, for one, was incredibly intrigued. There's this song in it that is like, I'm where I wanna be, I'm where I wanna be. And what's her name? Jasmine Amy Rogers plays Boop, and she has such a star quality. And I love that song. The music is written by David Foster. And so it has the makings of just a big Broadway blockbuster for me, with like the name for one, Boop, one of the most recognizable characters, right? And I think that she's an international character, so I can see her having that international appeal. Jasmine Amy Rogers, I think she's been on Broadway before. I think she was either on Mean Girls on Broadway or on the national tour. Anyways, she's basically pretty new to Broadway, but she is a star. I saw her perform at Maestra's Music Amplify 2024, that event that I went to. She performed the I'm Where I Wanna Be song, and she closed the night out, and it was so amazing. And she is such a star. She is so sparkly, and I feel like this is going to be a Broadway hit. I've watched a lot of videos about it and like some of their trailers that they've released about the show. I fear it could be a little kitschy and a little musical bubblegum poppy. Does that make sense? Like a little silly and like nonsensical, perhaps. I feel like it has the ability to go in that direction, but I also feel like it could be really good. I feel like it could go one of two ways. And you'll know I love The Great Gatsby, but I'm just saying all the reviews were like, this should be on a cruise ship. This is gaudy, da 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 da. I don't agree with it. I don't. But that is what people are saying. And I could see this show going in that direction because from what I see, it kind of has that same feel. But I also think that it could be really, really good. I really do. So let's read a synopsis about this show. Quote, the show follows Betty Boop, as her dream of an ordinary day off from being a super celebrity in her black and white world leads to an adventure of color, music, and love in New York City. One that reminds her and the world, you are capable of amazing things, quote. See, like it sounds like a little kitschy in the fact that it's giving Barbie. It's giving Barbie movie, right? Like she's in her own world, it's all black and white, and then she comes into the big city in New York, and I'm sure things don't go as planned. It's a little crazy, but she'll make it through. And yes, I am woman, hear me roar, right? Like it kind of has that kind of like silly premise, but I also could see it being so fun. And Jasmine Amy Rogers is awesome. She is a force. So we'll see. David Foster, of course, he's a great, great music writer. So I think it could be good. I'm excited. We know that it is going to be coming into a Schubert theater. We don't know what theater exactly, and it is announced to come April 2025. So we've got a hot minute, under a year, but we've got almost a year until it comes to Broadway. So don't get too excited, but I think I'm rooting for this show. I am. I'm excited about it. Another exciting show that I actually definitely most certainly will see, that it was announced this week, is coming to an off-Broadway theater, is coming to the New World Stages. But let me tell you, those New World Stages, they like to bring things over to Broadway because it's right there. They're like a block down from Broadway. And I think that this should come to Broadway. It is Drag the Musical. I am so excited for this to come to Broadway because I cannot think of two more like similar and cohesive industries than drag and Broadway, baby. This is going to be gold, and I'm praying. Well, I just want it to be successful. Like if it's happy off Broadway, it can stay off Broadway, right? But I just want it to be a success, and that's why I want it to come to Broadway. Otherwise, like I love the smaller theater and usually like less expensive tickets. So if it wants to stay off Broadway over at the New World Stages, I respect that for you. I love your journey, but also I can see this becoming a big, big thing because Broadway fans, I think most of us are in the queer community in some way, shape, or form. I think most of us watch RuPaul's Drag Race. It's just like it's just in the zeitgeist of who we are and our culture and our community. And I love the fact that we finally have a drag musical. I mean, Hedwig and Kinky Boots, like these things have happened. This isn't the first of its kind, but it has real drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race in the show. Let me tell you what this story is about because I think you're going to love it. Quote, so after a bitter split, Fishy queen Alexis Gilmore opens her club, The Fish Tank, while glamour puss Miss Kitty establishes The Cat House. Heels click and tensions rise as old wounds are opened up and the two clubs fight to survive. Together, our queens will have to team up to overcome their differences and show the world how to slay the house down, quote. I want to see this tomorrow. Like, I am so excited about this show. So at the helm of it, we have the creator. She co-created it. Alaska. I don't know if I can say her last name without being censored. Bleep this, but Alaska Thunderfuck. She is the co-creator and she is going to be the lead in it. And I love that. But we also have other Drag Race alums, including Jan Sport, Jujubee, and then also Laguna Blue, J. Elaine Marcos, and Joey McIntyre are also in the cast. So excited for this. It is going to be premiering on September 30th. And let's just go. That's all we know at this time. I'm ready for it. Like I said, get my ticket right now. I want to see it. I'm so excited. I love it. I love it. Like, I cannot wait to see this musical because I just feel like the songs are going to be so crazy fun. And the drag queens, their costumes, I'm so excited to see that. I'm so excited to see all their personalities. I'm excited to see how like Alaska and like Jujubee, how they take, are they going to be Jujubee in the show or are they going to be playing a role? You know, I'm so excited about all of it and I'm so curious about all of it. And it got pretty good reviews. Let me read one of the reviews. So Broadway World saw it over in LA and this was their review. Quote, if the creators of Drag the Musical were trying to perfectly blend the rowdy fun of drag performance with the glamour and polished veneer of a Broadway musical, they hit the ball out of the park. Especially thanks to Spencer Lift's inventive staging and punchy choreography, this show is either a righteous musical bursting out of the seams of the intimate bourbon room or a drag review elevated with a solid narrative, pristinely timed punchlines, and innovative novelty routines. I just can't think of two more perfect worlds to collide, drag and Broadway, which, like, I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see this. Get my ticket! I'm there! Okay, that wraps up our Broadway news for the week. Guys, thank you for listening to the second anniversary of From the Mezzanine. Y'all are the best. I love my listeners. Go and join me on the Patreon or become a Broadway bestie over at the Patreon for $5.99 a month. And you can get so much additional bonus content. And I will be shooting the Meet Me at the Stage Door, our after chat right after this. So we'll chat more over there. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at From the Mezzanine Podcast or Lindsay Stone _Broadway on TikTok. You can find all of my links down in the show notes, but I'm sure you already follow me. I said last week, let's try to get to 50 reviews on Spotify. I haven't checked, but I will check after I record this. If you're listening right now and you haven't left me a review on Spotify or watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, which I bet you already do, right? Right? You do? If you don't, go ahead. And if you're listening on Spotify, leave me a 5-star review. Let's try to get to 50 reviews on Spotify. That's my goal for the week. Thank you so much for listening to From the Mezzanine. Share it with your Broadway loving bestie because I am sure they're going to enjoy it just as much as you do. Y'all are the best, and I will see you next Tuesday.